Hey guys, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew a wrap skirt alongside a cowl neck top. For this tutorial, I used 2.5 yards of fabric. However, you can use 2 yards or more depending on your body size and how full you want the wrap skirt to be. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please remember to hit the subscribe button and like this video. And to my returning subscribers, thank you. Okay, so to start, the first thing we are going to be doing is to cut the wrap skirt. And in order to do this, I'm going to be placing my fabric on fold like this. The measurements that I'll be needing for this wrap skirt is just the waist measurements and the length of the skirt. I'm going to be timesing my waist measurement by 2.5, and that will be the width of the skirt. So the width of the skirt is 60 inches. Since it's placed on fold, it's 15. While the length of the skirt that I used is 32 inches. You can use more or less depending on what you prefer. So by the time you open up the fabric and you measure it, the width of it should be 60 inches. That is your waist measurements times 2.5 inches. Also, I've gone ahead to hem the edges of the fabric. I'm going to be hemming all 4 corners. Make sure that your stitching is very clean. And then by the time you're done with that, the next thing to do is to cut the rope for the wrap skirt. In order to do this, I'm going to be measuring it like so, and I'll place it on fold and I'll sew on it. By the time you are done sewing and you turn it to the right side, this is what it should look like. And then from here, I'm going to be attaching the rope to the skirt at the edge like so. So when you turn it to the right side, this is what it should look like. And that will be all for the wrap skirt. It is so easy and you just need to just wrap it the way you want. And then the next thing to do now is to cut the cowl neck top. And in order to do this, I'm going ahead to measure my chest line, bust line, waistline, and the length of the top, depending on how long you want it to be. So after that, I'm going to be marking out my neck width and half of my shoulder measurements. I've also extended my shoulder measurements by 2 inches, although I would advise you extend it by just 1 inch because I later made an adjustment at the end of it. So after marking it, you're going to mark your half of your shoulder measurement on the chest line as well, and you connect it to the top line. And then from this point, the new shoulder line that we marked, I'm going to go down by 1.5 inch, and then you connect it to the neck width. Then after that, on the chest line, you're going to be marking quarter of your bust measurements, and then you mark it there. While on this line, you're going to divide it by 2, and you will use a French curve to connect these 3 points together. So by the time you're done connecting, on the length of the top, I'm going to be marking the measurements around that area. That is, if the top is ending at the hip line, I'm going to be measuring quarter of my hip measurements on that point. If it is ending above the hip line, I'm going to be measuring that length. So I'll measure it and I'll connect it to the chest line. I'll also add sewing allowance to it like I've done. I'm also going to go ahead to draw out the neckline. Although for a cowl neck top, the neckline is always altered while you are cutting it on the fabric. And then also I'm going to be adding 0.5 inch sewing allowance at the shoulder line. By the time you're done doing this, all you have to do now is to cut. And when you're done cutting, you're going to place it on the fabric and you're going to be cutting for the back pattern. Make sure you pin the fabric very well while you are cutting, especially if you are using a silky fabric like this. So by the time you're done cutting and you open it up, this is what it should look like. And that will be all for the back. For the front pattern, we're going to place it on the fabric like so. You pin it down from the length of the top all the way to the chest line. Then after pinning it up from that chest line, I'm going to be slashing it open. I'm not slashing the fabric, I'm slashing only the paper. You slash it all the way to the end, like so. And then you open it up like this and you pin it down. How wide you open it is dependent on how deep you want your cowl neck to be. Like mine, I use 5 inches wide. But you can use 4 inches or more depending on what you want. And then from this point, I'm going to just pin it down. Then after pinning it down, I'm going to be connecting the shoulder line all the way to the end of the fabric. You're not going to be connecting it straight. You're going to slant it and then you cut it. Remember to notch the points where the shoulder starts from. Then when you're done notching, you're going to cut the remaining parts of the top. By the time you're done, you remove the pattern and open it up. This is what it should look like. So right now it may look a little bit weird, but when you are done with the sewing, it's going to be like this. So after doing this, the next thing to do now is to cut the lining for this top. And to do that, I'm going to be placing the pattern on another fabric, the same fabric actually. And I'll mark the shoulder points on the fabric, align it like so, and I'll cut it off. Then after cutting, I'm going to be removing the main fabric from the lining, and that shoulder points that I marked, I'm going to go down by 1 inch from it, and I'll draw a straight line. And when you're done with that, you're just going to cut it off. So now I'm going to be placing the lining on the fabric like so. I'll pin it down and I will sew round the neckline using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. By the time you're done, you're going to notch it like I'm doing now. Then when you're done notching it, you're going to turn it to the right side, and this is what it should look like. So you're going to take this to the pressing iron and you will just sew on it. Also for the back, we are going to do the same thing. I'm going to be placing my pattern on another fabric like so, and I'll trace the neckline on the fabric and cut. You're just going to shape the lining based on what you prefer. I don't want it to go all the way to the armhole, and that's why I'm cutting it off like that. So now you're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew 1/2 inch around the neckline. By the time you're done sewing, you're going to notch it also, just like we did for the front pattern. And then when you're done notching it, you turn it to the right side and you press it down. Also at this point, I've also gone ahead to use a bias tape to close the armhole for both the front and the back. You can use the main fabric as the bias. Just make sure that the stitching is very clean. So At this point also, you can go ahead to weave the lining for the front and the back. And then when you're done with this, you're going to be placing the front pattern on the back pattern, joining it at the shoulder and at the side seam. So just pay attention to how I'm joining it.
My love is patient, it's not watching the clock, no expectation.